Hello, I'm Jack Grady, and on behalf of the Archives and History Committee of the First Baptist Church on the Square in LaGrange, Georgia, we welcome Vietnam veteran Robert Weeks, and we thank him for his service to our country and also to our church. Robert, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this project. It means a lot to our church for us to get this recorded for posterity, if you will. And I know you had some interesting experiences in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam period of time. So we'll talk a little bit about that, if you will. I guess we could start with, were you drafted, or did you enlist as a
I enlisted on what they called the 120-day delay plan, which is I signed up like in November of '65, and it was supposed to be going to let me slide for the next 120 days, but as it turned out, the recruiter needed somebody, and so on the 26th of January, 1966, I went to Parris Island for boot camp.
Parris Island?
Which is in South Carolina.
South Carolina, right. Okay.
We got there and there was snow on the ground.
Oh,
it was January.
Gee, in South Carolina.
And it was cold.
Yes. So you started your boot camp experience.
Yes.
And this is Parris Island.
Yes.
The Marine base. You were a U.S. Marine.
Well, I was a recruit.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't claim to be a Marine until after boot.
But did you plan to be, aspire to be a Marine?
I don't know why I joined the Marine Corps. Both my dad and my older brother were Navy, and it just seemed like, I guess I was trying to be a little macho.
Okay, all right.
And I was engaged at the time to a young lady, and maybe I did it, just to be macho. And when I got to boot camp, I realized I'd made a mistake.
Oh, no.
It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Yeah. It was pretty rough.
Very challenging, I know. I have a very good friend from high school who went in the Navy. Went in the Marine Corps at the same time I went in the Navy. And he said something to me later, which was very much like you said, that he felt like, looking back on it, perhaps he should have gone on in the Navy with me. Well, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Right. And I had an uncle who was in the Marine Corps, served during World War II, was in the action in the Pacific. There's some great stories from him. So.
Okay. Boot camp then lasted how long?
Boot camp was an 8-week event.
Typically, it's a little longer than that, isn't it?
Usually 16 weeks.
I know my Navy boot camp was 10 weeks.
Cut it down to 8 weeks because
16.
they needed more and more people to go to Vietnam, and so they were rushing them through.
The need was growing, I'm sure.
The need was growing, right. So, yeah. So we got sort of the condensed version of it, I guess.
So you did rifle range and marching and all of
that? 2 weeks at the rifle range.
2 weeks?
Well, a week of practice, and then another week of, I think it was 2 weeks. Seems like it was 2 weeks. And then we had the final shoot, which I was glad that I actually didn't, what they called unk, I was not unk. I actually made a marksman's badge.
Oh, good.
So that was good. That was a good thing. I remember I think my score was 198 out of a possible 250.
Good.
Hitting targets, and we shot from both 100, 200, and 500 yards. And at 500 yards, that's a little old bitty target.
Yeah, get several unks.
And I qualified with the M14 rifle. When I got to later on, when I got to my first real duty station, I had an M14.
M14?
Which was a 7.62 millimeter weapon, gas-fired, recoil-operated weapon. I'm sorry.
Well, you remember
I remember that, finally.
Yeah.
And so from boot camp, which I made PFC out of boot.
Oh, right out of
Top
boot.
10% of my platoon. I'm not really sure why. I could be because during our last event, there was this guy who fell down and couldn't get up, So I had to carry him on a 3-mile run.
Oh, my goodness.
So maybe that's why they gave me that stripe.
Wow.
I don't know.
3 miles, you carried him.
Well, I think he fell down on the first mile, and then I picked him up and carried him for the rest of it. Or something like that. It was hard to remember.
Yeah, some detail.
66.
Sure.
A long time ago. We got out of boot. We went to Camp Geiger, which is part of the Camp Lejeune, for our advanced infantry training. And I was there for another 2 months, going through, war games and such as that.
Yes.
And then I got a 30-day leave, went home, and reported to San Diego, California for my military occupational specialty, my MOS, which was radio repairman.
Radio repairman.
And I went to school there in San Diego for the next 10 months.
Wow.
Had a few adventures while I was there, but there's no reason to go into that.
Okay.
It was an interesting school. It was more than I was really mentally capable of. And I was in a class of 25 and graduated 24 out of 25.
But you graduated.
But I graduated, that's right, because those who didn't graduate ended up being radio operators, and the life of a radio operator in Vietnam was 12 minutes.
Oh, come on, Robert.
That big old thing flipping up there, because they're always right by the officer, and that's who the snipers would shoot for.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a good incentive to try and
I'm sure.
pass that course,
Yes.
so which I did.
Yes.
And after the 10 months, I was given a 2-week leave to report to. Well, here's the interesting part. The reason I had to earn the money to go back, you get travel pay. Well, the travel pay from San Diego, California to Camp Pendleton, California was only $3.25. So I didn't even buy the plane ticket home, but got on standby, went home. I was an orderly at City County Hospital before I went in, and I spent the 2 weeks working at City County.
Oh, you worked here in LaGrange.
Yes.
Yeah. Earning money.
Earned the money to go back to Camp Pendleton for staging for Vietnam. We were there for almost 2 months for doing war games and learning certain tactics and things like that. And then in April of '67, we boarded a plane, I think it might have been at Edwards Air Force Base, a Continental airline there, commercial airline, stewardesses and everything, and they flew us to Vietnam. Well, we had to stop off in Hawaii for fueling.
A commercial plane
Commercial
flew
plane.
right into Vietnam.
Flew right into Da Nang, and as soon as we landed, they were under a rocket mortar attack. We came right off the airplane, right into bunkers.
Welcome to Vietnam.
Welcome to Vietnam, that's right. And the next day I reported and got my duty assignment, which was to go into a comm company in Chu Lai, Vietnam, which is about 60 miles south of Da Nang. An interesting thing there, I got on the C-130, and we flew down there, and I got off, and the first thing I noticed was pine trees and red clay, and I thought, am I in Vietnam?
Back in Georgia?
No, am I back in Fort Bend or someplace? So I went to my duty station, they assigned me where I was, and they told me where my hooch was going to be. And I'm going down to the hooch, but on my way to the hooch, there was this outdoor theater. And they had just finished showing a Roadrunner cartoon, and they were fixing to start a TV show. I don't know if you remember the TV show with Vic Morrow called Combat.
I do not.
Anyway, at the lead-in for that movie, there is a series of graphics of like bombs bursting, and you hear boom, 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 boom. Well, as soon as that was over, the boom, 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 boom was still going on. We were being mortared from the village.
Really?
By the VC.
Wow.
So, welcome to your new duty station. So while we were there,
felt like you were under attack, right?
We were under attack. Yeah, under attack. You were on the perimeter. Really wasn't not near where I was at, of course. Pretty far into the base.
You could hear the action.
Hear the action. That's right. And as we talked earlier, I've caught all the details, but we won't necessarily go into all the details. But say that I was. Of the 13 months I was there, 8 months were spent on some sort of duty. Guard duty, mess duty, the garbage truck, the bomb dump. And while I was on guard duty in January and February, or December, January, and February, 60-day tour, we had the Tet of 68 experience.
Oh, yes.
And they were up, July is a big horseshoe area there with the South China Sea, our base, which is mostly sands and sand dunes, and then circling that was a series of mountains. Back off in the mountains, there was the VC, or the
Viet Cong.
And the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army with rockets, 122 millimeter rockets, shooting them in at our base, mostly shooting towards the planes and the bomb dump. And one of them actually hit the bomb dump. I was on the north perimeter, which was about 3 miles away from where the bomb dump was at, doing guard duty. And this was just the last few days of while we were on
You were
guard
on
duty.
that perimeter.
On the northern
base.
perimeter, right on the edge of a village there. That same village that was rocketed and mortared when I first got there.
Yeah. Oh.
And one of those rockets hit one of the bunkers that had 250-pound bombs in it, and they all went up.
Wow, at one time.
At one time. Big boom. And like I said, I was 3 miles away. I could see what looked like a mushroom cloud going up, and I'm thinking, they finally did it. You know, they've dropped the big one on us.
Yeah.
But it was just the bunker going up. And as I stand there and watch the cloud rise up into the sky, all of a sudden the concussion hit me. It was so strong that it lifted me up in the air and threw me through the air.
Wow.
A good 15 feet. And
Wow.
it knocked a bunch of the sandbags off of everything.
Yeah.
And it was a deafening roar.
My
It was
goodness.
amazing, yeah.
I can, sure, I can imagine.
And
What
then-
an experience that must have been.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. It really was. The whole tour there with all the duties that I had to perform. We said we wasn't going to mention the one about the latrine, right? Okay, I won't mention that one then.
Well,
But-
most all of us had some duty like that.
Yeah, some duty like that. Yeah, that was quite a duty. I mean.
Oh, man.
So and then the next day, when that bomb deposit went up, it melted this 100-pair cable that was going from the command post to the airfield.
Oh, boy, unbelievable.
And so the wiremen, that was their job. They needed to go in and replace communications, get the communications going again. So they were in an area that was near where the bunker that blew up, with the possibility of more exploding bombs going off.
Gee.
So they needed help. So Corporal O'Brien and myself, we volunteered to help them. We learned quick about volunteering. You don't really need to do that. But anyway, we went out and
But you did a lot of it.
we did it anyway. We helped them out. So,
Yeah.
I guess that was probably the highlight of my first tour in Vietnam.
Your first tour now, so that you had a succeeding tour.
Well, I came back to, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune for about 10 months.
You came all the way back to Lejeune.
Right. I came all the way back to Lejeune, stationed, well, I had a 30-day leave, of course. Had a 30-day leave. I was at Lejeune for about 10 months. And during the time, I was seriously considering staying in the Marine Corps. I didn't have anything going orderly at the hospital.
Yeah.
You know, the girl who I was engaged to sent me a Dear John letter, and I didn't have that. And so I was thinking about staying in, but the only place that they were giving promotions in my particular MOS was back in Vietnam. So I needed to go back. So I volunteered to go back. I even had to extend my tour for 3 months so that I'd have enough time to do a whole tour over there. So I went back to Vietnam.
Second tour.
Second tour,
Wow.
yeah.
Well,
and I was
well,
stationed, and this time I was stationed way up north in a place called Dang Ha. It was just a little fire base that we had a mortar company, and we had 155 SP, self-propelled cannons, 155 millimeters self-propelled cannons. And there was a communications outfit there that they assigned me to. I finally got to work on radios.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't figure them out very good. But I got to work on these radios, and one day they sent me up to this place called LZ Stud, Vandergrift, which was right on the DMZ. They had some communications problems up there, and they sent me up there to see if I could fix them. And I wasn't having very good success with it. As I said, I wasn't the best radio repairman there ever was. And I told the guy, I said, look, I'm not going to be able to do this right now, but I'll just stay overnight and work on them. And the guy looked at me and he said, I can't let you stay overnight. And I said, well, why not? He said, well, last night we had hand-to-hand combat.
Gee.
3,000 of them was in the wire, and we expect the same again tonight. And the Marine Corps spent a lot of money on you, so we're going to send you back to your base, which they did.
How about that?
Probably. I was very fortunate there not to get involved in that.
Yes. Did you ever find out what happened that night?
No, I never did, but I just assumed that they...
Yeah, sure. They were attacked again?
Attacked again, yeah. They probably attacked every night. Yeah. And then, so that was pretty much the end of that tour there. That time I had the first time I caught Sergeant of the Guard, we had zappers in the wire, which was Viet Cong trying to come into our area there with satchel charges and blow things up, and they were caught in the wire and repulsed. So I don't know if that was the reason, but for some reason, the next time another duty came up, I got it anyway, which was I had to report to regiment for honor guard duty. The 3rd Marine Division was starting to pull out of Vietnam, and so I was going to be the guard bearer for the regimental colors at the going away ceremony in Da Nang.
Oh, Da Nang.
In Da Nang. So we spent about a week training there in Quang Tri, and then we went to Da Nang, and the 3rd Marine Division did muster out officially with this thing, and I was chosen for an honor guard that went over to the old city in Da Nang, which was an interesting place. There was like 33 generals and admirals sitting around in a pavilion there, and I'm standing there holding the Vietnamese flag and our honor guard. It would have been a perfect time for one of them attacks to happen, you know, because they would have just wiped out most of the command structure right then. But they didn't.
You were holding the Vietnam flag, you say?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we had the American flag, the regimental flag, and the Vietnam flag in that particular honor guard.
I see. Okay.
And I carried the Vietnam flag. It was the only time during both tours in Nam that I got to ride a helicopter. Rode it over to where we were at and rode it back, and got to see a few interesting scenes. I think I got some pictures somewhere showing rice paddies and the old city and stuff like that. So then the division was pulling out and going back to Okinawa. We pulled out. We went back to Okinawa, and it was left unbloused boots, stubbles on the face, to spit and polish, and blouse boots and junk on the bunk. I don't know if you know what junk on the bunk is. An inspection of all your gear laid out on your bunk. And I said, oh man, I don't want this, you know. I mean, I just spent 6 months doing practically nothing, and now I got to do this. And the opportunity for a float, a battalion landing team 2-9, was fixing to go on board ship and go back off the coast of Vietnam, cruising up and down the South China Sea as a support in case we needed to jump off and make a landing. You
weren't doing anything special except being prepared to go in if you were needed.
Right. I was the communications chief. I was holding the E5, holding down an E6 billet, and also I was the platoon sergeant. So I had those 65 men under me. It was quite an interesting little experience there.
Sure.
So we spent 2 months cruising up and down the coast on board ship. I love ship life. It was wonderful. They had the greatest food, the best coffee. My bunk was like right on the lubber line. I mean, it was a great place for a bunk. As an NCO, I had a quarters, sort of, and the rest of them were slept in 4 and 5 tiered bunks down in the bilge area.
I can relate to that.
Okay. So after that, we went to the Philippines for 3 months. We were in the Philippines for 3 months. I had a chance to go to Manila on a little R&R from there. I told you about the guy, a driver from the embassy took us down there.
From the embassy?
From the embassy. Took us down there and brought us back. On the way down there, we ran into some banditos. He said, just stay in the car, let me talk to them. And we went out, I don't know, I guess he gave him some money or something, I don't know. And then we went on to Manila. We didn't see him on the way back. But that was quite an experience there.
I guess so.
After the 3 months there, we went back on board ship, went off the coast again for a little bit. Then we went into Taiwan.
Oh.
I spent 2 weeks there. I caught my first shore patrol. My first shore patrol there in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for about 2 weeks.
Military police.
Military police kind of thing.
Shore patrol.
Shore patrol, right. Little SP on
I know
those.
what shore patrol is.
Yeah. And get to carry this big old baton. I could pop people in the heads if I wanted to. But I didn't bump anybody in the head. And we went from there. We went back off the coast for a little bit while, and then we went to Japan. And I was there for 3 months in Japan. And while I was there, I got an opportunity to go to Expo 70. And I don't know if we need to talk about what I did there or not. No,
Well, I guess not.
That's not. Yeah, but it was quite an adventure, as I told you.
But it was an unusual experience.
It was.
This is a
We were actually-
worldwide exposition.
The exposition was, yeah. We were stationed on Mount Fuji.
Okay.
The Japanese
On Mount Fuji.
on Mount Fuji,
I saw it
on the inland side, not on the ocean side, but on the inland side.
Okay.
The Japanese had a fire base there. As I said, I was with an artillery outfit.
Now, what year was this?
This was 1970.
70. Okay.
1970.
Yeah, you said Expo 70.
Expo 70. That's right, 1970, and then I mustered out. My time was up. I went back to Okinawa. I'm sitting at a desk there where, I said I did all that because I was thinking about staying in the Corps. Sitting there on this side of the desk. On the other side was this master sergeant. He had the contract. All I had to do was put my name on it. I asked him a couple of questions, and I didn't particularly like the answers, so I pushed it back and said, I think I'm going to go home.
Okay.
So went back to Pendleton and mustered out there.
So we write the end to
The
that
end, right
experience.
there, yeah.
But how many years now? That was what, 2 years altogether?
Well, I went in as a 2-year reservist, but while I was at boot camp, I shipped over for 4. And then, so I lost 2 months there. And then, so I also had to do that extension of 3 months so that I could go back on my second tour. So I was in for 4 years, 5 months, 17 days, and 13 hours.
You know precisely.
Yeah, and 13 hours.
Oh, gee.
Must have died at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, but it was a rich experience, wasn't it, in so many ways?
It was.
It was a growth experience, I would imagine.
And I probably should have signed that paper. Because I got out. That's another story.
Yeah, okay.
That's another story.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your memories of those days. The Vietnam War ended when?
75, I believe it was.
75, yes. 1975. Well, you have a lot of memories from those days and those experiences that you went through.
I don't think about it much.
You don't?
No. And I spent last night trying to recall a lot of that, and I realized why I didn't remember them all.
Yeah, sure.
It's something worth forgetting.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I had a good friend who died over there, a guy I went to high school with, named Larry Kiesler.
He was from LaGrange?
He's from LaGrange.
Yeah.
Went to LaGrange High, graduated in '64, went right into the Army, was killed in Nam. And so,
I had an older brother who was an officer in the Army. It was his career. He spent 32 years in the Army. But he was in World War II. He was in Korea. He was in Vietnam.
yeah.
In Vietnam, he was on General Westmoreland's staff. I don't know exactly where the headquarters were.
McVee headquarters.
Where?
McVee.
McVee.
That would have been down in Tanzanite or someplace down there, somewhere near Saigon.
It was an unusual experience, but years later, I happened to have an opportunity to be with General Westmoreland at a function. And I mentioned to him that my brother was on a part of his staff and appreciated his leadership. And he said, "Who was that?" And I told him, Colonel John Grady. "Oh, Colonel Grady, good soldier." And that's all he said. Good soldier.
Well, that's always a good comeback, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. But I appreciated getting at least to say hello to him.
You're from the Valley, aren't you?
Yes.
Didn't I show you that book I got?
You mean your album?
The one from the mills down there?
But I have the same. I have a copy of that.
Do you have a copy of that?
I do. You're talking about the Valley during World War II.
Right.
I do. I have a copy of that. And my wife also has a copy, Jean, because her brother was in the Army, and he was killed in action at the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium during World War II. But anyway, his picture is in the first part of that book. His name is James Jones, if you want to take a look at it.
I will.
But that's where he was. Well, Robert, thank you so much for this. I appreciate the opportunity to sit with you and talk about this.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of other things that we could talk about, but we're limiting this.
Some of them might end me up in Leavenworth or something.
I don't think so. Let me mention this. So at the outset of our experience here together this morning, I mentioned that this is under the auspices of the Church Archives and History Committee.
Right.
And they're to be commended for wanting to do this. There are 4 copies that will be made of the DVD. And I want to salute Paul Barnes, who is our building superintendent here at the church. But Paul is doing the actual recording, and
Right.
he does an excellent job, and he makes 4 copies of this recording today. And one of them will be kept in the archives downstairs in the church by the Archives and History Committee. One copy will be placed in the library here at the church, and people now, years to come, if they wish, they can check it out just like a book there in the library and view the interview that we have had. Another copy goes down to the museum on Main here in LaGrange.
You still a volunteer then?
And I appreciate their interest in this too. Kay Minshew is quite interested. I had an opportunity to speak with her yesterday while I was down visiting the great display that's on in the main floor.
I saw that in the newsletter.
And she expressed her interest in these interviews as well. And she's looking forward to seeing this one. And then the 4th copy will go to you for you to keep. And so
is that just my interview or all of it?
No, your interview. But you, of course, can, as I said, you can check out any others if you wish through the library. Carol Elvis will be glad to work with you on that. So anyway, we appreciate these folks that are helpful in putting all this together. But most of all, we thank you and the other veterans who are members of our church and served our country in such a remarkable way. I would also spend a moment to thank you for what you do here. I know you're a very important part of our church choir, especially the senior adult choir. We'll be starting up again for another season beginning next Monday.
That's right.
But
Look forward to it.
You're an important part of that senior adult choir, and we're pleased that you are. One of the things that has impressed me about your service in our church is how you are so helpful to the older adults of our church when they enter and leave the Church Street entrance. The traffic out there is horrendous.
It is, yeah.
And you help them find a place to park. You help them get their cars back on the street. I've seen you out there even stopping traffic so that they can get out. But you do a great job of that.
I got into that. Actually, I started out as a greeter for the shuttle bus, which finally quit running.
Oh, yes.
And Ken Carter was actually doing what I'm doing now. And I just sort of, I like to say I'm Ken's assistant. So,
oh, I see.
because really it's his ministry, and he started it. And
I
I
see.
just sort of fell into it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your help there. Very meaningful. Well, thanks again, and best wishes to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.